In July of 2006, Valve Software announced the release of the Orange Box, a collection of 3 titles, including the highly anticipated continuation of the Half-Life 2 story, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, the reintroduction of Team Fortress 2, which many thought to be abandoned, and an entirely new title, Portal. While Valve expected the other 2 games to do well because of how highly they'd been anticipated, they probably expected Portal to fly relatively under the radar, or at least not perform as well as the other 2 titles. When the Orange Box released, Half-Life 2 and Team Fortress 2 performed as well as expected, but Portal was a surprise favorite, many even favoring it to the other 2. It wasn't long before Portal began to expand into not just a great game, but an actual cultural phenomenon, especially when games are still a relatively niche art form. For example, most millennials or zoomers will probably recognize the cake is a lie meme, even if they've never laid a finger on a console. Before long, Valve realized the massive franchise potential Portal had, and they were quick to begin development on a sequel. And when Portal 2 came out, it was subject to even greater acclaim. It's no wonder why audiences were so taken with Portal. It's charming, it's funny, it's clever, it's intelligent, it's fun, it's replayable, and it's unique. It can be appreciated by players of any age, skill level, gender, or whatever, which is what makes it so iconic. And as a result, for many, Portal became a stepping stone to the world of gaming, and I am among them. The 2 earliest games I can recall playing are Minecraft and Portal on the Xbox 360. I got the Portal games when I was 10 or 11, and I was smitten in a matter of hours. As I solved the puzzles, I always found myself laughing at GLaDOS's lack of self-awareness, and I enjoyed every minute of it. However, there was something else my prepubescent mind didn't pick up on as I went from chamber to chamber, because being the child I wasn't very aware of the idea of good game design, the atmosphere. In retrospect, GLaDOS's wisecracks were a thin veil that hid the dark horrors that lurk in the shadows at Aperture Science. Don't let the jokes and fun gameplay fool you, for they are only a thin layer of duct tape covering the crack-littered surface of Aperture Labs. So, without further ado, let's discuss Portal's dark atmosphere. So at the start of the game, you can probably pick up that something isn't quite right. You wake up in the relaxation vault, and an emotionless, disembodied voice begins to talk to you. Now, of course, in 2021, we all know this voice belongs to GLaDOS, but imagine you're playing this for the first time with no context. If you turn on the captions, you don't even see a name attached to the subtitles, just some omnipotent being speaking to you. On top of this, everything in the facility feels somewhat cold and lifeless. The furniture and walls are sleek and monochromatic, with the portals being the only colorful things that stick out in the blank, bland environment. Every item's name is prefaced with Aperture Science, very corporate and soulless. All of this is to build a theme of isolation, and a lack of any kind of vivacity or life. As you traverse the test chambers, you get more and more details that contribute to the idea that something is amiss. For one thing, all the glass-encased observation chambers are empty and lacking of any kind of life. The panels in the elevator are covered in a layer of grime and must. The tests are going from fun, challenging puzzles to concerningly dangerous, and you're left wondering, what happened? Why does everything seem so deteriorated and unkempt, when this place clearly used to be very sterile and orderly? When you put GLaDOS's wit and jokes aside, this game can easily become a horror game. You wake up in a bleak, gray facility with a robotic voice guiding you through an experiment of some kind, and as you explore the facility, the tests become increasingly dangerous until they're literally throwing guns at you. And the worst part is, there's nobody to guide you except the voice in the intercom, and her relationship with the truth seems to be dubious at best. In most games, you'll usually see at least some indication of life. You'll meet other characters or somebody to guide you along on your mission, but not in Portal. Aside from GLaDOS's silly comments, you're pretty much on your own. If not other characters, you'll usually at least see trees, grass, plants, the sun, or at the very least the sky, but not in Portal. The closest you get to seeing the outside world is for a few seconds at the very end, but that's all you get before the party escort bot drags you back into Aperture. This makes the characters and your relationships with them so much more iconic. In a bleak facility devoid of any kind of life, it brings genuine despair when you have to burn a pink box that's been the closest thing to a friend you've had through this nightmare. GLaDOS is a sinister, insane AI that slaughters humans for fun, but her charm and snark makes her such a fun character that you can't help but love her. The turrets are just white spheres that obstruct your progress, but they're so cute and understanding you can't help but love them too. However, while the interactions you do have with these characters, or character I guess, are certainly iconic, you can't help but feel a constant, looming sense of loneliness for the most part when you play the game. This is reflected quite well in the soundtrack, which boasts a sense of distance and emptiness. Take a listen to this track, Self-Esteem Fund, which I feel embodies the essence of the game quite well. As you can tell, it's a very hollow sounding song. You can barely even call it a song. A lot of it is just eerie mechanical noise. There isn't much of a rhythm or time scheme, and the noises overlap in this disturbing electronic cacophony. This probably represents the bleak test chambers you traverse through. They seem to indicate that something used to be here, but then something happened that caused it all just to stop one day. Most of the test chambers seem to be pristine and uniform, but then there's details like the grime and dirt on the elevator panels. You'll also probably notice the lack of any kind of organic instruments. In fact, besides the end credits song, Still Alive, organic instruments don't appear at all in the soundtrack, at least as far as I could find. It probably represents the lack of human life after GLaDOS committed her massacre. All that's left is her and you in this cold, bleak, deadly facility. At least, that's how it appears. There is someone else here, lurking in the shadows, and his life is banking on your victory against GLaDOS. You probably know where I'm going with this. Chamber 16 is one of my favorite chambers because of how paradigm shifting it is for the game. Up to this point, the tests have gone from fun and relatively safe to questionable, to put it lightly, but now you're being targeted by military-grade weaponry. The danger of these tests has gotten incredibly alarming, and now you're desperate to learn what secrets are lurking behind Aperture's spotless facade. On top of this is the first chamber with a Ratman den. You traverse the chamber, and at one point you need to use some cubes to knock over the turrets, and the cubes are holding open the entrance to a Ratman den. You might be curious and decide to investigate behind the panel, and your fears are confirmed about the horrors of this place. This den is the first time the cracks begin to reveal themselves. The floors and walls are dirty stone and metal, and there's exposed mechanisms everywhere. Even worse, there's evidence that someone was here. There's empty cans of food and jugs of water, and arranged scrawlings etched onto the wall. Tally marks and statements indicating that GLaDOS' promise of cake isn't true. Once again, the soundtrack kicks in to emphasize the atmosphere. Have a listen to No Cake for You. As you can tell, this theme is much more harsh and ominous compared to something like Self-Esteem Fund, which is relatively quiet and tranquil. There's sharp and what seem like reversed metallic sounds in the background, building that sense of terror more and more. It's haunting and very off-putting, and it leaves you wondering, what the fuck happened here? But that's all that can be done here, so you continue on with the chamber and stealth your way through the maze of turrets, but that crack doesn't leave your mind. You move on to Chamber 17, another one of the most iconic chambers in the game, because this is where you will meet your best friend in this horrible nightmare, the Companion Cube. This chamber is unique because rather than just being any other puzzle, this test has you make use of a single cube to assist you with all the puzzles. The Companion Cube deflects pellets, holds down buttons for you, can be used as a step stool for you, among others. By the end of the level, you'll be fully acquainted with this pink heart box, and it'll be the closest thing to a friend you've had this entire journey. However, GLaDOS, being the sadistic monster she is, has another trick up her sleeve. At the end of the test, you have to incinerate the Companion Cube, your only friend. You'll probably only be with this thing for 15 or 20 minutes, but when you haven't had any kind of relationship for the entire rest of the game, to have to kill your one and only sidekick induces an overwhelming sense of despondence, and GLaDOS knows this. She knows that this is the only friend you've had, and perhaps this is just some sick psychological experiment to her, toying with your emotions and trying to create as much despair and loneliness for you as possible. What makes this even worse is that she's clearly egging you on. She warns you to take care of it at the start of the test, and on top of that, she tells you that it won't threaten to stab you, and can't speak, and to disregard its advice if it does. She even says it brought you good luck before telling you to incinerate it. She clearly wants you to feel guilty and bad at the end of the test, and it certainly works. But perhaps there's a good reason for her to warn you against listening to the cube's advice, because a friend of ours has taken the advice of the cube before, and with it, survived GLaDOS' rampage. Another Ratman den can be found here, but this one is incredibly fixated on the Companion Cube. The Companion Cube is put over the face of a sexy calendar model, it's pasted onto random portraits of people, there's a collage of various photos of it with crude hearts scribbled around them in blood. Whoever left this message was obviously incredibly attached to the cube, and it demonstrates the damage GLaDOS and her horrible experiments can do to their victims. As you approach the final stretch of the game, the curtain is gradually pulled back on what happened here. For example, in Chamber 18, there's a hidden room behind a panel, where you can see a shallow pool of that toxic, murky sludge that's been filling the pits in the test chambers. This seems to indicate that the sludge isn't supposed to be there, and that it's only there because the facility is flooding and nobody is there to clean it up. once again suggesting that this place is long abandoned and adding to that theme of isolation. Then comes the iconic twist, as GLaDOS declares that the experiment has reached its conclusion and attempts to cook you alive, but of course, Chell says, "I don't think so," and gets the hell on out of there and prepares to confront GLaDOS herself. The next section is the escape sequence, as you navigate the innards of Aperture to have a standoff with the mastermind behind this horrible game. At this point, the facade is fully shattered. You're now seeing what's really happening. The metal is rusted, the offices are abandoned, a layer of must covers the wall panels, and everything is lit in a harsh scarlet. The horrible truth is on display for you to see in full view. GLaDOS is now speaking to you directly, making it clear those messages were not pre-recorded, nor was she just programmed with malicious intent. She is a sentient, sociopathic AI who wants nothing more than to torment her human test subjects. Her coldness is now on full display. She first tries to plead with you to come back and tells you that it was just a joke, and to reflect on all the fun times they had together. After this doesn't work, she tries to convince you that you're going the wrong way, and you might as well just give up. Once Chell begins to close in on her chamber, she now just threatens to kill you outright. She is a textbook sociopath, chanting emotions one after the other with no regard for anything other than her own safety, which she knows is being threatened. All she wants is death. And this idea seems to be confirmed in Portal 2. Of course, she's pretty spiteful towards Chell and Wheatley throughout the game, but she doesn't seem to express much emotion besides that, at least until her awakening as Carolyn. As the two of them close in on Wheatley, GLaDOS has a heart-to-heart with Chell, where she reveals that for the first time she's been hearing a voice that wasn't a chorus, her own voice, the voice of a conscience, and expresses that she's concerned that something is wrong with her. This suggests that the morality core did basically nothing except maybe make her sociopathic tendencies less outwardly visible, and maybe restrain the extent to which she could torment people. The only time she'd felt true organic emotion was after she learned of her identity. In other words, the GLaDOS we see in Portal 1 is nothing more than a wicked AI, and now it's time to confront her and shut her down. When you first enter the chamber, GLaDOS guilt trips you some more before a core falls off her. Chell burns it in the incinerator, and that's when the cake hits the fan. With the morality core destroyed, GLaDOS's true nature has been revealed, and now has a much more human voice. It also sounds very sinister and deliberate, almost seductive as the mask falls away. She begins pumping in neurotoxin, and now it's a race against the clock to destroy GLaDOS before she can finish you off. From this point on, we get to see GLaDOS's mental state deteriorate as we bring her to her knees. Before we talk about GLaDOS's insanity, I want to talk about how genius this is as a final battle. The battle is not hard by any stretch if you know what to do. But recall that so far, Portal has been an intellectual puzzle game, where you can play at your own pace. Suddenly the pressure is laid on you hard, with the timer looming over you as GLaDOS pummels you with insults. I can imagine it would be quite stressful for an inexperienced player. Once again, I want to bring up the music. This track is called You Can't Escape, You Know. It's perfect for this battle, because it's not just any final battle theme. It isn't particularly epic or climactic, it's just a rapid, stressful series of electronic noises, because, like I said, this battle plays off the player being forced out of their comfort zone rather than being genuinely difficult. The music doesn't need to be grandiose because this battle isn't that. Rather than a dramatic showdown, it's a race against the clock. Anyways, back to GLaDOS's mental state. The first core to destroy is the curiosity core, the one that incentivized her to test in the first place. Once that's destroyed, GLaDOS is now just a seething beast with no desire other than to kill. Any reason to keep you alive is now gone, and she's more than happy to kill you as fast as possible. After that, the intelligence core is destroyed, and there's just anger left. With her intelligence gone, all she's doing is hurling childish insults at you, like making fun of your voice and mocking your lack of family. She's now nothing but a giant, grumpy behemoth, with all positive emotions she might have had gone and replaced with pure, unadulterated fury. Then GLaDOS is finally done for. With essentially nothing left of her, she's blown to bits, and you, alongside her remnants, are blasted into the outside world. But after only a few moments of respite and fresh air, however, Chell is dragged back into the facility, and finally rewarded with her prize of cake, an appropriately dark ending for a dark game. This ending is so fitting. Portal has been an eerie, vague experience, with practically no context given. GLaDOS is defeated, but we're still stuck in Aperture. It's unknown what became of the person who wrote the scribblings, and it seems like everyone else is dead. So our best hope can be that we somehow survived, or that we somehow got some kind of justice for all the deceased scientists and test subjects. And if you consider that Portal exists in the Half-Life universe, this ending is even more depressing, because even if Chell did succeed in escaping, she would immediately be oppressed by the Combine. Now she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Stay inside Aperture with little to no food or water and fresh air, or live in the oppressive, violent Combine society. A truly pessimistic ending. Honestly, I think that Portal's darkness is one of its most overlooked aspects when it's being praised. If someone were to ask me what makes Portal a great game, of course I would immediately cite the gameplay and writing, but depending on who I was talking to, I would also direct them to Portal 1 for a decent psychological horror experience. Looking back, this game is a truly despairing and downbeat experience, and replaying it for this video made me realize how damn well it achieves a sense of ominous isolation. And making this video made me realize that Portal is an even more spectacular game than I realized. Of course, I already adored it, but I didn't even realize how much love is packed into every part of this game, including the music and the atmosphere and the design. There's a reason the series is so iconic and memorable. So, the moral of the story here is that Portal is an incredible game, and you should go play it. The end. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Sorry this video took a bit. I actually had most of the video edited a couple weeks ago, but didn't really know how to finish it, so I just decided to conclude by expressing my endless love for this series. As I said, these games are so meaningful and fantastic to me, and I really wanted to talk about one of the best aspects of it that, in my experience, doesn't get nearly enough recognition. As for my next video, it's probably going to be about Danganronpa, more specifically the third game. It's a series I've only recently gotten into, but it's a really entertaining experience, and if you know anything about the ending of the third game, you'll know there's a lot to talk about there. And I'm pretty sure that's all I have to say. I think by the time this video goes up, I'll be at 2,000 subscribers, or at least very close. So of course, thank you guys so much. A very belated Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you guys. And once again, thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like or nice comment. And if you're feeling a little frisky, maybe even think about subscribing. I love you all so much, and as usual, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!
Stay inside. Maybe you'll find someone else to help you.